Music by John Fahey here on Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. As we talk about the latest news, Iraqi government saying they're throwing Blackwater out of Iraq. We're joined by two people, by Doug Brooks, who heads the International Peace Operation Association, representing companies like Blackwater, which is a founding member, and also Jeremy Scahill, author of Blackwater, The Rise of the World's Most Powerful Mercenary Army. I want to talk about the history of Blackwater in Iraq. Jeremy Scahill, let's begin with you.
Well, I think that most people in the world first learned of Blackwater USA on March 31st, 2004, when 4 Blackwater operatives were ambushed and killed in the Iraqi city of Fallujah. Their bodies were burned. They were dragged through the streets, strung up from a bridge over the Euphrates River. And the Bush administration responded to that attack by leveling Fallujah and destroying the city. In fact, it was the first of a number of sieges against the city of Fallujah, and it really fueled the Iraqi resistance that haunts the occupation to this day. That was the first time that many people heard of any kind of a private security or private military company, a mercenary company operating in Iraq. And Blackwater has been at the center of a number of pivotal moments in Iraq. In fact, I don't know that there's any other private entity that has had more of an influence on events on the ground in Iraq than Blackwater. A few days after that Fallujah ambush, Blackwater operatives engaged in an all-out firefight with supporters of Muqtada al-Sadr in the Iraqi city of Najaf on April 4th, 2004, once again putting Blackwater in the center of major developments in Iraq. And then in the past year, there have been a number of incidents that not only have impacted Iraqi civilians, but have caused tensions between Baghdad and Washington. Last Christmas Eve, an off-duty Blackwater contractor allegedly shot and killed a bodyguard for the Shiite vice president of Iraq, Adel Abdelmahdi, and the Iraqis are calling that a murder. Blackwater responded to that incident by, they say, firing the contractor and then whisking him out of the country. They say that they were told to do so by the U.S. government. To my knowledge, that individual has not been prosecuted. Blackwater says that they're cooperating with the Justice Department in an investigation over that incident. But we're talking about, I mean, imagine if an Iraqi killed a bodyguard for Dick Cheney at a Christmas party somewhere. I mean, what kind of outrage would there be? And the Iraqis actually kept this under wraps because they felt that if they had released this story and that it became public in Iraq, that it would so outrage the population. How is it that an American can murder a bodyguard for the vice president of the country and apparently nothing happens to them? Then in May, there were back-to-back firefights involving Blackwater on a street outside of the Interior Ministry that drew in U.S. forces and Iraqi forces as well. That also caused an enormous amount of tension between Baghdad and Washington. And then we had this incident that happened over the weekend where we understand 8, as many as 11 perhaps people were killed in yet another firefight. So Blackwater clearly has been at the center of some very violent moments in Iraq, and also appears to be creating some cracks between Washington and Baghdad.
Doug Brooks, we tried to get Blackwater on. They didn't respond to our emails or calls. But who does Blackwater answer to? Under what laws do they operate?
Well, essentially, they're contracted by the U.S. government, so they have they can be held accountable contractually, they can be penalized contractually, their contract can be revoked. After that, you have individual level accountability, and at this point they are now under UCMJ, but they're also under MIJA, the Military Extraterritorial Jurisdiction Act, which essentially says that a person working for a contractor can be brought back to the United States and tried for a felony. Interestingly, it also applies to other nationalities, not including local nationals. So there's that clause as well. This is something that our industry, that IPOA, has actually been working on to improve. The better the accountability, the better it is for our industry. Well, we have companies working around the world. We have companies working in Darfur. We have companies working in Afghanistan. We have companies in Mogadishu where the U.S. government doesn't even have their own people. So it's important that this accountability aspect be addressed, and we need to look towards the future on this because we are going to be using contractors in the future. It's a critical element to not just Iraq and Afghanistan, but also to peace operations for the UN and Haiti and Congo and so on.
Jeremy Scahill. Well,
right now in Iraq, there are about 180,000 U.S. contractors, according to the Los Angeles Times, operating alongside 165 to 175,000 U.S. troops, which is an enormous force. It's one that the Bush administration does not publicly own. The fact that the U.S. has almost 400,000 personnel occupying Iraq is almost never mentioned by any U.S. government officials. General David Petraeus himself...
If I can weigh in on that point at some point.
General David Petraeus himself said that basically contractors are essential to the survival of the U.S. occupation. So the private sector now is dwarfing the size of the official U.S. military presence in Iraq. And Doug, Doug talks about all of these laws under. Hold on a second, Doug. Doug talks about all of these.
Point. Can I clarify the numbers issue?
Go ahead, Doug.
There's of the 180,000. We'll accept the number of 180,000 contractors, but keep in mind most of those are Iraqis, the kind of people you expect or would hope would be doing the security and reconstruction. Also, keep in mind of the 180,000, many of them are doing the reconstruction work.
Right, this is one of the grotesque realities of the Iraq War. It's very similar to the way multinational corporations operate, where at the top you have the executives of Nike and Disney reaping the profits, and then you hire sweatshop labor on the ground and say, oh, well, we're helping the local economy. And that's exactly what these private war companies are doing in Iraq. But I wanted to respond to what Doug is saying about the accountability issue. Yes, there's a law in the books called the Military Extraterritorial Jurisdiction Act, which in theory provides for the prosecution of contractors who commit a crime in a foreign war zone back inside of the United States. And then because of change in language last year to the Defense Authorization Act, there in theory is the ability to prosecute contractors who work for the Department of Defense under the court-martial system. But the fact of the matter is that we've had tens of thousands of mercenaries go in and out of Iraq. Not a single one has been prosecuted for any crimes against an Iraqi. So either we have tens of thousands of mercenaries running around Iraq who are actually Boy Scouts, or something is fundamentally rotten with the system. And I personally, Doug, do not have faith in the Bush administration's Justice Department to go after these crony corporations of the administration. I mean, we see the politicization of the Justice Department. Do we really believe that they're going to go after Eric Prince's men in Baghdad?
I think we should separate out the political aspect, because essentially these contractors have been working in support of U.S. missions long before the Bush administration. We had 700,000 contractors in World War II. We had 80,000 contractors in Vietnam. In the Bosnia, we had more contractors than soldiers. So we've had these contractors there. It doesn't really matter who the administration is. The contractors bring amazing capacity and capability. My own academic research was in Sierra Leone. There was a handful of contractors supporting the UN peacekeeping operation there in 1999 and 2000 when I was there.
Doug Brooks, let me ask you a question.
Moved or fixed or done was being done by contractors. I think they play a critical role.
Doug Brooks, can Iraq throw Blackwater out?
It's a good question, because of currently under Iraqi law, which a lot of it comes from the CPA, is Order 17, which essentially says that the companies, as long as the individuals are on duty, they're actually under U.S. law. So there's some question as to whether what the process would be and how the Iraqis would do it. So I really can't answer.
Jeremy Scahill.
I mean, the reality here is that every time Iraq has made any kind of noise about prosecuting contractors, the contractors are whisked out. It becomes a major discussion between Washington and Baghdad diplomats. And the fact of the matter is, this is solid proof. There is no sovereignty in Iraq of the government at all. The U.S. gutted out the Iraqi legal system, made it virtually impossible for the Iraqis to hold accountable murderers and thugs inside of the country who are foreign operatives. And so when the Bush administration talks about how great everything is going in Baghdad, we have to remember that when U.S. mercenaries shoot Iraqis, the Iraqis are basically powerless to stop them.
I wanted to play a clip from CNN. Blackwater, of course, is denying the wrongdoing. This clip from CNN yesterday was senior producer Suzanne Simons, who apparently is writing a book on Blackwater. She appeared shortly after you, Jeremy, were interviewed about the shooting.
Now, I'm told by this source that no civilians were actually killed in this incident at all, that all of the people killed were people who were firing on this convoy, and there are even some early reports that some of those people were wearing bits and pieces of Iraqi police uniforms.
That's Suzanne Simons, a CNN senior producer. That's what she was identified as, and she had only originally said that she had a high-level industry source, and that's who her sources were.
Right. I mean, I think this is part of also a long tradition of CNN on behalf of the U.S. government engaging in spin. I mean, what does it mean, a top industry source? I'm not even sure what that phrase means. And you know, they're basically saying, well, we believe.
She said what she did later say is that you have to take what the Iraqi government says with a grain of salt. She instead had high-level industry sources.
Right. I mean, I think this also goes back to the point I was trying to make early on. I think Iraqi officials were under the mistaken impression that they have some degree of sovereignty, and now Condoleezza Rice clearly is reading the Riot Act to the Maliki government.